started on the assumption that there's Prosecco, and that's no bad thing. So my name is William Kilbride. It's my privilege, my pleasure to be chairing this final session today, and I'm not going to detain you really any longer, except immediately to hand over to Karen Brookfield of the Heritage Lottery Fund to provide us with a funder's perspective. Karen.
Thank you very much, William, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, can I say thank you to the network for inviting me to speak, and particularly to Maria and to Rosie, who've been so great at organising everything. Whoops, oh no, there we go. You can see why I'm in charge of digital things. Many of you will know the Heritage Lottery Fund, I'm sure. I recognise lots of people in the room who work with us, who've had grants from us, who've, I know, might hope to get grants from us. Sadly, today I haven't brought any money. Just need to get that out of the way at the beginning. I also recognise that we've got a number of guests from overseas. Those of you who perhaps don't know the Heritage Lottery Fund so well, we use money raised by the UK's National Lottery to fund projects that make a lasting difference for heritage and people. Here is a lovely picture of the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, but most importantly, there are some people in the picture. You often see pictures of heritage with no people, but not in my slides, hopefully. Since 1994, we have been able to invest more than £7 billion thanks to those people who play the National Lottery. That is a staggering amount of money, which would have been unimaginable before the lottery existed. What matters more, though, is the number of people who've benefited from the 40,000 projects that we've been able to fund. Every single one creates social benefit for people. So I've just put up some pictures of a few of those people in some very diverse settings doing very different things. One of the challenges for me today is to be able to talk at the right level when we've got more than 40,000 projects, and in recent years we're funding about 3,000 projects a year. And as you'll see, pretty much everyone is doing something digital, which I'll come back to. So it's quite challenging, and I often like to challenge audiences. If you tell me a place, I'll think of something we funded nearby. Actually, I don't have to go very far at all today. I can just stand here, because we're really proud to have invested in the redevelopment of this bit of Kelvin Hall, and particularly proud that it brings collections and into a community space and to sport. And if I walk across the road, we're very proud of Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum. If I walk a bit further, we're very proud of the Botanic Garden. We're very proud of the other museums in the centre. We're proud of Merchant City, where we help regenerate the cityscape. So I love Glasgow for all of those reasons and others. They also exemplify that heritage is what you choose to make it. So I could list the 40,000 projects, but I'm not going to give you a list of what we say is or isn't heritage. It is all of those sorts of things on the screen. It is historic buildings, archaeological sites, collections, places of worship, industrial sites, but it is also that intangible, people's memories and experiences, history of place, language, cultural traditions. Anything that people value from the past and want to hand on to the future. So I think digital has got to play a part in there, hasn't it? We've been thinking a lot about things from the past, and we're thinking about today and the future. And also, we give grants to any type of organisation. So I realise I'm talking this afternoon to lots of you who come from something that you might think of as a heritage organisation. Perhaps museums. I know there are archive colleagues. I know there are colleagues who work in other institutions and organisations, but we also fund a lot of community groups. And the challenge for me again this afternoon is to say things that relate to everybody, from the smallest group with a grant of £3,000 who want to open up their heritage and share it, to, and here I will nod at William, the very large redevelopment of very large museums with multi-million-pound projects who face very different challenges in some respects. But in another respect, they all face the same challenge of using those tools to do what they want to do in their project and in their organisation. So where does digital fit in? It fits in anywhere. I'm not going to labour all the points I put on my slides. I've got a lot of them, and they'll be available afterwards so you can follow them up. What we say is that you should use digital tools for anything which helps you achieve your mission in your heritage project to deliver our outcomes. So the outcomes we have are things like heritage will be in better condition and better managed and be more sustainable after your project. People will have learnt about heritage. People will have had a chance to volunteer. They will have enjoyed themselves. There's got to be some fun in it somewhere. It's not, we've seen that this afternoon with some of the things we've seen. And that communities will be a better place to live, work, visit. Environmental impacts, negative environmental impacts will be reduced. So it's up to our projects how they use it. They're tools. I'm well known for going on the record and saying, on the one hand, digital is dead, digital is disappearing, because it's everyday life. So I'm also on the record, I was just discussing with Katie, who's coming next, I don't look forward to receiving any digital strategies, because I don't really know what would be in it, because I'm not seeing a pen and paper strategy. I might want to see a content strategy, might want to see a digital content strategy, but actually I'd rather see it underpinning what you do in your work, which I think is quite important when we come back to evaluation. What are you seeking to achieve with it? It can be tools for very large projects. It could be a small part of an overarching project. But as investors of lottery money, we do also have some requirements. So in 2012, our trustees decided that we would take hold of this and we would consider what we would ask those who we fund to do, which is to have a particular approach to licensing their content. And we've gone for a CC BY NC license to balance the idea of free access for non-commercial use and then a discussion about using material for commercial purposes. Doesn't rule it out, but it's a discussion about the balance of public money invested and public benefit. And we also want digital outputs, as we've had to call them, couldn't think of a better word, to be usable for 5 years and for the underlying digital files to be available for as long as your contract with us lasts, which in a biggish project is 20 years. So lots of challenges built in to lots of that. I'm not going to go through in great detail, but I want to draw out the lessons. In 2015, we decided we need to look at how things are working out in our project. So we did a piece of research we commissioned from MTM London, who took a snapshot of grants that had been awarded in the time period from July 13 to July 14, tried to get them all to fill in a survey, got about half, which I think is not bad, asked them about what they were doing, the scale of the work, their target audiences, their budget, and then chose some and looked at them in a bit more detail. And it's those ones I want to focus on a bit there. But two things I want to say. One is that we didn't look at on-site installations. So quite a lot of what we've been talking about this afternoon, we didn't look at. We've been funding on-site interactives probably since the first years of our existence. We really wanted to look at online. We wanted to look at emerging things like apps or games or some VR and some AR. And I'd also just really like you to bear with me when I show you things and say that the research found that some things didn't work and some didn't. They are just examples. Please don't take it out on the projects that I put on the screen. Please let's not tweet about someone not having a very good website or something not really working. They're just examples. So you'll forgive me if I go through those quite quickly as well. So what are people producing? Oh, sorry, there's the first thing, our findings. From those 512 projects we looked at, everyone is doing something digital. But only 8 of them were actually choosing to meet all of our outcomes through doing something primarily digital, which was interesting because lots and lots of people had been asking us to change our policy so that you didn't have to have, as they saw it, you didn't have to have real-world activity. It's taking a long time for that to be adopted. And 94% of the outputs are designed to give access to heritage. Particularly common are those 3 things: website, a blog and film to document your project. So an awful lot of our projects are out there on the web, but they may not have heritage assets. And an online version of an offline exhibition. Not sure that's still quite as common as it was in 2015. This is the kind of outputs people are producing. I don't think that will surprise many people. There's a huge pressure out there. Everyone feels they've got to do digital. I'd really like to know where that comes from, on the one hand. Some of it, I think, inadvertently comes from us, but some of it, I think, comes from perhaps not really thinking about what they're seeking to achieve and who it's for. So some of the myths that we might all be wanting to bust in the evaluation: if you do digital, you'll get young people. And we'll come to that in a second. But if you're doing a project, you must have all these things. I'm very disconcerted by the percentage who are doing things for schools. And I think there's a lot of issues around how you work with schools. We heard some of them this morning. A very familiar story from Stuart. A lot of HLF projects feel they must do that, and I don't think they really know why. And also, a lot of them are using digital to create new film, new images. That's the everyday life now, isn't it? We really have to think hard about that, because in 2012, when we thought about our policy and our Creative Commons license, it was much less common to be using social media. So who are they doing it for? Well, I was quite pleased to see that the everyone category is, 5%. So anyone who actually said they were doing it for everyone is 5% of the survey. I think, though, because categories overlap, if you add up a lot of the rest, actually they are doing it for everyone. They've just broken it down. We are going to produce something that's suitable for adults, for children, for young people, for schools, for families, for people with disabilities. How hard have people really thought about that? I think the conversation we were having this morning about blurring those boundaries between users, audiences, creators, collectors is really interesting. But it's got to be focused on what you're trying to achieve. So I think there's probably some food for thought in there. And then we set ourselves the task, which we ask all our grantees to do, which is to evaluate what you're producing. So MTM London sat down and they had to look using they had a digital maturity index that they'd already devised. They had to adapt it slightly. They sat down to try and assess the 40 things that we looked at, which was a range of websites, apps. I don't think they could actually look at a game. I think the one game that came up in the sample wasn't finished. But they used these categories to try to assess, first of all, the range and scope of ambition in the material. So I just put these up as discussion points that we could all think about whether they're useful when you think about evaluating what you do. Does the output draw on a range of different media? Does it contain a large volume? Is it complex? Is it simple? Not an expectation that it should be complex, but does it work? And then when you look at them, these are two examples, and we're not going to pick out on poor old Penshurst with a perhaps less than effective digital output than they might have liked. And this is the first appearance of PDFs as a favoured document of a lot of Heritage Lottery Fund projects, and we could discuss the merits of producing things in PDF format. On the other hand, In My Footsteps have tried very hard to make their heritage accessible. MTN then had to look at ease of use and interactivity. These picks up some of the points from the earlier presentation about the museum in Stockholm. How easy is it to use? Or indeed in The Hague. Can people use it? Does it do what it promises to do? Will it work on mobile? Or is the website not going to work? Is it clear architecture? Is the functionality there? Same questions as you would ask if you went to, I don't know, buy a car or some of the others. Basically, is it going to do the job you want it to do? Invidious task again to look at it and say whether or not it does. But this is just an indication of the kind of issues that people come up with in trying to make what they want to do. Such enthusiasm for sharing heritage, I think I would categorise our project as. Such enthusiasm can overwhelm both the practicality and the resources that you have to do it. On the other hand, something like Devon's Nocturnal Wonder is clearly very successful, and you'll see that come up again. Then MTM looked at reach and engagement. So who's using it? Can the project tell who's using it? What are they doing? What engagement has there been? So is a lot of it just in broadcast mode? Is it, again, that supply side? Here's the stuff, you must want it, we're just putting it out, and we don't know what you're doing with it. Sadly, there's quite a lot of that going on, I think. A lot of projects have got a lot of heritage material and are not really engaging people with it, not seeking contributions, not seeking comments. On the other hand, something like Sutton Archives, and it's great to recognise an archive service there, have got a very active community around those absolutely extraordinary glass plate negatives. Can you find any of this online? The great discoverability question. So we asked MTM here to look very hard at whether you could find the material itself. Not can you find the project. I don't think anyone goes looking for projects unless they're already in the family circle of that project. But if you're interested in Sutton, or you're interested in the First World War, or you're interested in churches or steam trains, will you find the fabulous material that our projects have? And are people helping you with it? Not necessarily, not all that easy to find. I think probably everyone's sitting here thinking, oh, how discoverable is anything I've ever been involved with, either 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years. So the researcher's view, this is pretty uncomfortable reading. It's uncomfortable reading for a funder, and it's probably uncomfortable reading for all of you in the community of people who want things to be better. There are real challenges about making things good quality, effective, discoverable, engaging. And the shining lights, as MTM London called them, often seem to be driven by one person with a greater capacity, greater skills, greater ability to make that happen. That's a pretty uncomfortable lesson, I think, for all of us. So what does a funder do about this? And what does a funder try to help with these challenges? Actually, I think those are fairly much the challenges of any project. When you start out on something, be it the multi-million-pound redevelopment of a museum, be it a small community project, be it digitisation, or be it actually a series of events, are we clear what we are seeking to do? Purpose. Do we understand who we're seeking to work with? Why? What they want? What they need? Are we prepared to listen to them? Are we prepared to make changes? And we've heard some really good practice this afternoon on that. Do we have the knowledge and skills to do what we think we're going to do? We may not have it ourselves. Do we know where to find it? And if we're going to pay for it from someone else, can we be a good client? Anyone in this room who's ever worked with an architect knows what trying to be a good client is like as well. Same question. Can you evaluate? Can you write a brief? Can you put it out? Can you evaluate what comes back? So we ask our projects to think about that. Will it be discoverable? Do we know how to sustain it? And you've seen we've got some very particular requirements, but I think there's some very big issues about sustainability and the spectre of NOF-Digi, for those of you with very long memories, previous lottery investment. Where is all the stuff digitised in about the year 2000? Can we find it? Can we use it? Was it value for money? All of those questions we funders ask ourselves. And ambition, we'd want to encourage ambition. And I put evaluation last, partly because I don't have the answers about how you evaluate it, but also because I think it's the thing that people think about last, and they shouldn't. They should be thinking about it higher up that list, in the same way as they should be thinking about evaluating any project from the beginning. So, loads of food for thought for us. We've decided in HLF that the first thing we need to do is think about those questions ourselves as a funder, and we need to upskill ourselves, and we need to understand what's going on, and we need to listen to all of you. And we're just embarking on a programme of that, very much thinking how things have changed since we looked at our policy and our approach in 2012. And then our next responsibility is to be able to help anyone who thinks they might apply to us for a grant to do something in which digital would be a useful component of meeting our outcomes. That's going to be quite a big challenge. As I said, we've got a lot of projects. They're very diverse. A lot of them are very low capacity. But I also think it's part of a society challenge, which is that we've all got to be upskilled. We've all got to be able to cope with the complexities of intellectual property, of sustainability, of knowing what is good. And I mean, how many of us would look at a website twice if it wasn't very good the first time? It's a general societal issue, I think, and I think it's really interesting for all of us to be part of that. Having said we as a funder want to take part in that, I don't think it's a conversation on our own. I think it's a conversation with all of you. Today's a really useful event. I've learnt loads already, and I think probably in the discussion we'll learn a lot more. And I look forward to talking with you. But I just wanted to leave you with my most recent discovery of the most wonderful bit of digital cultural heritage I have seen in ages. Hats off to Hotel Chocolat for a Yule log, a chocolate Yule log, modelled on a 3D scan of a foraged elm log. How sustainable and how heritage can you get? Thank you very much.